we're horrified at first. Like, you spend money, how?
Your debt is what?
Your debt is what?
Hi, and welcome back to the Smart Couple Podcast, episode 90. I'm Jayson Gaddis, I'm your host, and I'm really happy to be here with you in this moment. Thanks for coming back, and thanks for joining us if you're new. This podcast is designed to help you have a great relationship over many years and get out of the magical thinking that it's supposed to feel good all the time, and remind you that it actually takes work to have a fulfilling relationship, a fulfilling marriage, or a fulfilling long-term partnership, right? Like anything good in life, as Henry Rollins says, you got to work at it. Nothing good comes without effort and working through pain. That's my experience. It feels true for me. In fact, on the other side of pain and challenge is usually a victory that feels outstanding, and my confidence increases when I get through a challenge, right? So really, really good stuff here. And I have great guests. I have smart people here. I have couples and experts and my wife, and it's just a good place to learn about intimacy. Okay, so thank you for coming. All right, in this episode, I have my friend Bari Tessler. Bari Tessler Linden is a financial therapist, mentor, coach, and mamapreneur. Bari's gentle, body-centered approach weaves together personal, couple, and creative entrepreneurial money teachings into one complete tapestry. She's the founder of The Art of Money, a global year-long money school which integrates money healing, money practices, and money maps. And I'll share more about that at the end if you want to dive in, because it's starting soon. Her work has been featured on Oprah.com, Inc.com, and the Huffington Post, and U.S. News and World Report, Reuters Money, the Fiscal Times, Experience Live Magazine, Yogi Times, Best Self Magazine, and Emerging Women. Bari is also the author of The Art of Money, her new book, A Life-Changing Guide to Financial Happiness. Okay, so Bari is a force, and check this out. I took a class from Bari years ago when I had my head up my ass around my bookkeeping. Bari, at the time, was running a company called Conscious Bookkeeping, and I just, let's just say my finances looked like your garage in its worst moments. You know how the garage is like that place where you just throw things you don't want to deal with? Yeah, I was just really entitled and confused and lost around money years ago, and reached out to Bari. It wasn't that long ago, it was around this time my son was born, so it was about 7 years ago. And man, did I have a lot of work to do. And so she was, I talk about it with her in the podcast today, and she was just, helpful to put one foot in front of the other. I just didn't know how to do this. And it really set my wife and I on a path to getting organized. And to this day, we're finally in a place where we're very organized around money. And there's always more to learn. I have tons to learn still, but it feels really good. And Bari's been a part of that, a really big part, especially in the beginning there. So I really like what Bari's about. She has a really caring approach to this whole money stuff that we have so much charge around. And in this episode, we're going to talk about that charge. Why is it that money is one of the top 3 reasons people get divorced? Why is that? Well, Bari and I talk about it. And why do we have so much charge? Why is this so loaded? Well, I asked Bari that question, and I think you'll like her answer. And she talks about money dates, of course, which I personally like a lot, and I can't believe couples don't do money dates. I'm always like, what? Now that I do them, of course, had you asked me a few years ago, a money date, I would have been like, we don't really need that. Like, what are you talking about? So I just find tremendous value in money dates with my wife. And in fact, we just the other day went over our year-end books and with our bookkeeper, and we were under budget for the year. It was huge. So big victory for us. Yay, honey and I. What's up? Shout out to my wife. And then Bari just offers some real practical advice on 4 steps the two of you can take. You know, if you're in a partnership, really good practical advice here on what you can do to get your money house in order and to slowly come together as a team on this. And if you're not in a relationship, this is going to be worth listening to for your future relationship. You know, money doesn't often come up until we're past the honeymoon phase and we either move in together, we get married, or it's all of a sudden we're like in a committed relationship, and then money issues start to pop up. You bought what? Where did you spend that? Why did you do that with your money? You have how much debt? Wow, you got that big of a trust fund? You know, like there's so many secrets and places we hide out with money with other people, whether we're really wealthy or really poor. It doesn't matter. It seems to me that people hide out a lot around money. So this is what's interesting here to me is that, you know, we've gone through about 90 episodes in the Smart Couple podcast. And this is the first time I'm talking about money in relationship. And why is that? Well, because it's not my jam. I don't teach people about money in relationship. It's Bari's jam. And people like Bari. And it's not a big pain point for me. And it's not what you, the listener, you don't write in about this to me. I pretty much never get questions. I'd say 90, well, just let's reframe that. I'd say about 1 or 2% out of all the emails I get, comments are about money. So it's really rare. So because you're not asking me to do it, I haven't done this. And because it's such a common pain point, I feel like we've got to go there. We got to start talking about money occasionally. Because it's a hidden component of our relationship life that can drive a wedge between two people. It doesn't have to, of course, but it seems to quite a bit, right? If so many people can't figure this one out. All right, so let's get right to it. Here is Bari Tessler Linden, and stay tuned to the end for your action step. Okay, welcome to the show, Bari Tessler.
Thanks so much for having me, Jayson.
Yeah.
Good to be here.
Woohoo! Local Boulder friend, Bari is joining us today. I'm really grateful you're here. Bari, tell us, you teach people about money. I took a course from you years ago called Conscious Bookkeeping, I think, or I can't remember the name of the course. And my wife and I took it, or one of us took it. And it was very, very helpful. It was kind of the beginning of my journey around getting kind of right with money in myself. So that was like in 2007 or 8.
Yes, a long time ago. And it was called Conscious Bookkeeping back then. Now I call it The Art of Money. But yes, it was Conscious Bookkeeping.
Cool. So it's been fun to watch you grow and grow your business. And certainly you've helped me a lot. Can you tell us about how you got into this, the business of money and the art of money?
Yeah, so this surprised the hell out of me because similar to you, went to Naropa years ago. So it's been 25 years. I got myself to Boulder, Colorado at the age of 24 to study somatic psychology, body-centered psychotherapy at Naropa University. And, you know, my topics at that time were sexuality, sensuality, intimacy, relationships, and death, and body, food. And that's what I thought I'd be working with and working on. And that's what I did for a decade. I worked in hospice. I led authentic movement groups for women. I worked in the mental health field. And then that school loan came due from Naropa. And it split me out. It split me out because it was $60,000 because I was making $11 an hour with a master's degree. And, you know, thought that was my path to making money. I'd never really thought about making money. That wasn't an interest, a concern. It wasn't something I was going after. You know, in my mind, we were training to be therapists, to do good work in the world, to serve. to bring our gifts, and money would just follow somehow. Money wasn't spiritual for me at the time. All these things, like we just weren't. I wasn't taught to strive or want money. That was bad. As being trained as a therapist, that's the messages I got. Was do your good work, and somehow you're just gonna make your money. But
Right.
I was making Go ahead.
No, I'm just laughing. Yeah, I'm relating. Yes.
Yeah. So making $11 an hour with a master's degree. So getting the master's in psychology didn't get me towards creating a livelihood where I was doing my good work and earning a good living. But I had never asked those questions before until that school loan came due. And then I had my total freak out moment where I thought, I'll just travel the world. I'll never come back. I'll be a nomad. That's a good option. What about that?
Yeah.
And I considered it. And then I thought, well, that's not my thing. I need to look at this head on, right in the eyes. I need to take this on. I can't run away. And I need to research the hell out of this and learn every single thing that I can from the ground on up and make myself my own case study and dive in. I mean, there were a few other moments. There was a moment where I was working in the mental health field 40 hours a week, and they asked me if I wanted 5 hours in the back room to do the bookkeeping for the program I was working for, if I would do their Quicken and Excel. And I had to take a deep breath, pretend like this was a completely normal thing that they were asking me, because at the time I was throwing away my bank statement. I was not paying attention.
Yeah.
I did not have a relationship to money. I really did not. I studied every other topic, or almost every other topic, except for this one. And, in graduate school, was completely left out of Naropa. It was completely left out of my training. Yeah. And so that was also, school loan comes due, $60,000, I'm making $11 an hour, and all these things start adding up. How is this left out of my education at Naropa? How is I going to start my own private practice? How is I going to work with couples, since supposedly this is one of the biggest issues, if not the biggest reasons people get divorced? That's not true. On the surface it is, right? We can talk about that. And on and on. And then I just, started following the trail and realized this was not only left out of my Naropa education, was left out of undergrad. I did not receive a financial education from grade school and up in small increments. And I just started, of course I thought I was the only one, which is what I do. At first I'm like, I'm the only one with this issue.
Yep.
And then I started looking around from people from all different backgrounds, religions, ethnicities, economic backgrounds. And I was seeing that this was all a huge missing piece for all of us. And I just started, I said yes to the 5 hours a week learning Quicken and Excel. I went in that back room. I learned it. It was like the light bulbs went on. I can use the other side of my brain. And even if I was not good at math as a kid, I can learn this. And I decided to take a detour from the mental health field. I needed a break, and I took a job in an accounting department at Rudy's Bakery, our local organic bakery.
Yep.
I thought I'd be there for 4 months. I was there for 2 years. And then I'm almost done with how this came to be. And then I met a contractor, a guy named Jeff, who said, I'll teach you QuickBooks and I'll pay you, Rudy's Bakery jumped me to 13 an hour, and then I moved up to 15. And then to be trained to use QuickBooks, he was going to pay me 20. And once I learned it at 25 an hour, and I started moving through money ceilings that I couldn't move through, with the master's in psychology that I thought. And then I just started learning every single thing that I could. I wound up having a bookkeeping business for a few years for therapists and coaches and artists and contractors. And my God, they just threw their bookkeeping at me. They could care less.
I
had a master's in psychology. They didn't want to deal with it. They didn't want anything to do with it. I learned so much about them. I was the ages of 28 to 32. I didn't feel mature enough to start a private practice, and I never really felt that was my path, but I had no clue how to create any other path. I had no idea about online teaching or any of that. And then one day I just started, after 2 years into having the bookkeeping business, people started coming to me for more of the financial therapy work. And then I met a mentor, and she said, it's time for you to teach and come up with the methodology. And I was like, what are you talking about? I like to work one-on-one or one with a couple. And she said, it's time for you to teach, young lady. And I basically went out in the woods and said, what am I supposed to bring back to my community to help them have a conscious, healthy, savvy, whatever your adjectives are, relationship to money? And I got zapped with these 3 phases, which I still use today. I call them now money healing, money practices, and money maps. And I ran home from my hike, and Forrest and I, my husband and I, were living in a 350 square foot cabin. We put it all up on big white paper, and he helped me name it all, organize it all, and I began teaching my groups of 10 people at a time for years and went from there.
Wow. Wow, that's so cool. There's so many places we could hang out in that story. I just really appreciate the journey of how you got here, given all those things you went through. And it's so common, right, that I never took a class in high school on money or junior high, middle school, and definitely I had no interest in money in college for whatever reason, just because of my values. And then grad school, I went to the same grad school, and not a thing about money or private practice or building a business or anything like that. So we'll kick you to the curb with your degree, and good luck. So anyway,
exactly. But what they did do, which I feel, is that they really taught me how to know myself and listen to my body again and its messages, and hang in really deep places and the ebbs and flows of life.
Oh, yeah.
And that, and all of that gave me the skill set to go, okay, they didn't teach us anything about money or business or bookkeeping or accounting. I'm going to go learn that, and I can do it. And I can do it, even though I was terrified. For the last, I'm 16 years later now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So clearly, like, every one of us has maybe our own relationship to money, and then we marry or bring someone else into their relationship to money. What starts to happen when 2 people come together with wherever they're at with their money psychology and their money issues?
Well, most of us don't even know what our money story is. Even if we've done work on all these other areas, we still haven't taken the time to say, what is my current relationship to money around spending and saving and giving? And then what did I learn from my parents, positively and negatively? And what about my lineage and ethnicity? And what did that teach me, or my religion? And, there's a whole story, like there is around intimacy and sex and body and all the other stuff. And so for me, it's we have our own stories, our own patterns, healthy and unhealthy, that we've been learning and living and acting out or rebelling against or reacting. And then we're playing out our own patterns, and then we come together with another person. And most of us haven't even studied our own money story yet. And then we merge with another person, and they usually have a very different story, similar to anything else. We polarize.
Yeah.
I'm gonna generalize, but polarizing is, I'm the smarty pants around money, and the other person feels like, well, I'm just kind of stupid, and I just don't know how to do this. I wasn't good with math, and so I'm not smart in this way, and I'm just kind of stupid around this. So I'm going to hand it over to whoever it is. And the other person knows, or one person really likes to have control. So they're going to track the numbers. They're going to be watching the numbers closely. They're going to pay everything. They're going to be on top of everything. And the other person wants to stick their head in the sand and not have anything to do with it. And one person thinks about it so much, and the other person worries a lot, and the other person just doesn't want to have anything to deal with it. These are just normal polarizations that happen all the time.
Yep.
And so here's the thing, like there's no one person who knows how to do it better ultimately, because we all have missing pieces. So even the person who comes from a traditional financial background, which I get, I'll get a couple, and this is so generalizing, but okay, so the guy comes, male, female, the guy comes from a traditional financial background, and he just thinks he knows everything and can teach his wife everything, right? Because this is his background. And this is a real couple that wrote me one of my favorite testimonials. And he just said, I was so resistant to even doing this work with you, Bari, and your whole style is a bit too feminine for me. But, and he just said, I felt like I could teach her everything. And so he was reluctant, but she needed to do the work. She needed a different style. She needed a different approach.
Yeah.
She couldn't hear him. She needed a different, he wasn't the right teacher for her.
Yeah.
And they just had such different styles. He whipped out the Excel spreadsheets, and she was like, I don't even know what you're doing. I don't even know what that is. And he's like, and so they had such different styles that she had to slowly learn about her own money story first, learn about, you can, listen to your body. You need to tap into your own intuition around this. And just, she needed to go slower and understand her money story and her emotions first, because it was so damn emotional for her.
Yeah.
She projected so much into money, which so many of us do. And, they just really needed to learn how to have money dates and money conversations and start really at the beginning, which is what I have people do. I don't have you talk about numbers first. I have you talk about your money relationship or stories. And I know couples that have been together 5 years, 10 years, 20 years that start to talk about money from their childhood, and they've never talked about this before.
Yeah.
They're having brand new conversations that they've never had. And this little story about this one couple, it took him about 6 months or so, and their money dates at first, they say they were swearing, they were fighting, there was a lot of blaming and shaming. And then slowly they just kept talking about what they learned about money, what they didn't. Everyone has different emotions. Some people get really angry and pissed about it. Some people get really scared and fearful. Some people get really anxious. They just took the time to get into that. And then he realized that he wasn't her teacher, and he wasn't the right teacher for her, and that I was a better teacher for her. And she needed to learn in a different way. And he had some new things to learn that he was never taught in his accounting classes or MBA classes.
Yeah.
And they're one of my favorite stories, because he was so skeptical and he just really thought he knew everything. And so with couples, when we polarize, there's always things for us to learn from the other person. And at first we're just horrified by the way that the other person does things, because it's so different.
Yeah.
And probably everything I'm saying you can relate to every other area of life or how you work with couples, right?
Sure.
We're horrified at first. Like, you spend money how?
Your debt is what?
Your debt is what? Or your debt is what? Instead of, I would say, what was going on in your life during that debt, meaning during that phase of life, during that transition, what was going on for you?
Yeah.
Did someone just die? Did you just divorce? Did you, were you leaving the corporate world to start your own business? Were you, who knows? But, right, there's so much more going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, at first we're just horrified, and we do blame and shame, and we just need to really get underneath that. Or here's another thing that we do as couples: we go to our spouse or honey partner, like, we get the credit card bill, and then we see something we don't like, and we start hyperventilating or getting pissed, and we start running to them and pointing at the bill going, how did you do this? How dare you do this? And maybe they're in the shower, or they're getting ready for bed, or, we just go, we
freak out. Yeah.
I've heard we're freaking out, or right before falling asleep, we start to talk about money, and it's not as though it always has to be planned out and money dates. I do like that. I'm like, go out for dinner, have a glass of wine, or have some chocolate, that's my thing, or light some candles, or do whatever rituals you need to do. But other people just need to say to their partner, is this a good time for us to talk about money? Or I have a question about money right now. Is this a good time? It's such a simple question that we don't even think about asking, because there's so many emotions involved.
Oh yeah, it's so charged. Yeah. So is this you're kind of getting into it, is this the reason, is part of the reason this is such a common, they say it's one of the top 3 things couples fight about is money. Is this the reason? Is we don't really know each other here, and we come together, and then it's kind of like we polarize and we clash, and it's like we find out the truth? Is that sort of what you're saying?
Yeah, I feel there's a few things in that. Number one, I always go back to, we were just simply not taught this growing up in small increments on grades, from grade school and up on a practical, emotional, psychological, and spiritual level. We were not taught this, right? So we get together and we merge our finances right away, because that's what our parents did, or that's the generation we're born into. Or we keep them separate for years. And there's no right way with any of this. It's, are you talking about it? How does it feel? What's the next step into intimacy for you? I've had couples married 20 years, and their next best move was to separate their finances out. And that's what kept them together. Yeah. And then, for me and my husband, we were separate for 7 years. And I wanted to merge along the way, and he kept saying no. He wanted his independence. And I was like, come on, let's merge, because it had meaning to me.
Yeah.
And he kept saying no. It's like, And finally, when we decided to have a child, then it was this obvious next step to merge. And he says he doesn't even remember why he didn't want to. But we were doing a dance for years of, I save my receipts for groceries and you save your receipts from groceries, and we add them all up and then we owe each other what's ever left. But we were doing that groceries, right? And restaurants. And at some point we were adding it all up and it was like, you owe me 200, you owe me 200. This is ridiculous,
right.
You know? But so there's all these things we do in the beginning of a relationship, because we don't know how to have straightforward conversations around money, and we haven't done our own money work to understand, what is our money story, what are our strengths, what are our challenges, what do we do well, what are we working on, what are our growing edges. We haven't done our own money work, and then we come together, and then we just start polarizing. And what I also always say is it's about money and it's never about money. So it's about money, again, is that we weren't taught this. So there's all these practical things to learn. We need to learn the language of money. We need to learn how to set up a bookkeeping system, or which tracking tool do we want to use. I know for a long time you were debating, like, should I actually get on QuickBooks?
Yep.
Should I stay on Mint? You know, It was like a whole thing.
Totally.
It is. You know, right?
Yeah.
And so there is like all these practical things to learn. How do you read your numbers without glossing over or getting so freaked out? Or, you know, I used to train people on QuickBooks and bring the chocolate and bring the box of tissue, because there was moments of crying and moments we needed chocolate.
Oh my God, totally. I had a friend mentor me for a year straight on QuickBooks. He would meet with me like every third week. And because I really wanted to get it. And it took me a year.
Yes.
Till I got it. And I was like, thanks, dude. Yeah. And the guy spent, he's just a very close friend. He spent so much time. He was so patient with me. And this is a couple years after, my class with you. And it took me that long. Because I had all those stories. Oh, I'm not good at math. I don't know what I'm doing here. And then I had all this charge around money. And anyway, there was a lot to work through there for me.
But that is really, really normal terrain for me. So unless you are a finance person, if you are creative in any sense, then, or just trying to live deeper values, this stuff is charged and loaded, and there's more going on. And so for me to hear that it took you a while to go from Mint, which you were on, to over to QuickBooks, and take you a year to learn it, there's so much to it. You got to work through all the emotions, and then there's so many parts of learning to track your numbers, read them, review your numbers, look at patterns, plan.
Yeah.
And that's a learning curve. And again, if we were learning this as kids or teenagers, it may have been quicker, but we're learning it as adults. We have to go back to beginner's mind. It's so hard. So learning QuickBooks over 6 months to a year, even longer, is really, really normal terrain. So it's about money, because there are all these things that we were not taught that we have to learn as adults. And I really, invite people to learn it, not do it all. I did my bookkeeping for 12 years on QuickBooks, and then I finally passed it on to a bookkeeper, and I'm so happy. But my God, I'm sure you did too. We learned so much about bookkeeping and accounting and our business, and on and on.
I knew what was coming in and going out, which was like kind of enlightening for me.
Yeah. It is enlightening, I know. And so satisfying, and brings so much clarity, and you know where you are and where you're not, and it helps you make decisions better, and on and on and on, right? So that's one of my favorite things, to get people to the numbers. But the part where it's not about money is that it's about all these deeper issues, and it's about safety. It's about safety and trust, and our sense of value and worth.
So let me interrupt you and ask you a question, just to rewind, because I think you're talking about it right now. Actually, we both use the words charged and I think you said charged and loaded. I'm just going to ask the obvious. Why is this conversation so charged and loaded? Why? Like, what's the big deal here? Why do we freak out?
So I have a few answers to that, and one is my answer that I repeat so much, but it is the thing of, this was not taught as we were growing up. So it's not part of our school systems. That's changing, right? I think that is changing. I hope it is. I know that financial education is being brought into some high schools. I work with so many parents of all different ages, so I'm helping so many parents and families to do this work for themselves, and then they are passing this down to their children.
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
But let me, why is it charged and loaded that we didn't get taught this in school? Is that because, okay, so I go like decades without learning this, all of a sudden I'm forced into a situation where I need to look at it, and then I feel inadequate and insecure? Is that why you're saying it's...
Okay, so yeah, two more things. So what you're talking about for me now is shame.
Okay.
And so this is one of the first things, I call it shame, money shame, and it's like one of the first cloaks that I see with all of us. We're taking on a new area of life, a new topic, a new theme. We're learning something new, and we don't like the way we've done it. We feel bad about it. We feel bad about where we're at. We think we're not good enough. It's not okay. I mean, shame for me is simply who we are is not okay.
Yeah.
And we go to a place of, I am not okay here. Yeah. I'm stupid. I'm not smart. I've made mistakes. I've made so many mistakes. I've burned bridges.
Yeah,
and
totally.
I do this worse than anyone I know.
Right.
Everyone else knows how to do this. Or they came from a wealthy family, so their parents taught them. Or they came from a middle class family, so they had all their needs and wants met. Or they can, this.
Okay,
the
it's making more sense now.
Stories go on and on, right? So there's all this shame. And again, side by side, we weren't really taught We weren't taught emotional intelligence. We weren't taught how to understand our emotions growing up as well. And so for me, this is a huge layer of our relationship to money, is understanding what's your cocktail or concoction of emotions that comes up for you. There's the whole spectrum. Same with any other area of life, any other big relationship. When I was first learning about intimacy and relationship, the shame was outrageous. In me. It was so painful and so awful.
Oh my God, it's been so big for me too, yeah.
It's okay. And so with money, I see this in my community. It's just, people are coming with a layer of shame. Now, it could be small little things over a lifetime. It could be a big thing that happens, like you file bankruptcy or you had to do a short sale on your house, or you owe the IRS a lot of money because you've been afraid to deal with your taxes.
Yeah.
Or you receive an inheritance and you don't know what to do with it, and you're in such grief over that person dying and you don't want the money anyway. And I mean, there's just, those are some of the biggies,
sure.
The death, the divorce, I get a lot of women, 40s, 50s, 60s, that are learning about money for the very first time because there's a divorce. And all of a sudden, again, I'm really generalizing and it's changing, and my age group is 25 to 75 years old. Mm-hmm. But when I started, I'd say the first 5 to 10 years, there was a lot of older women that were learning about money for the very first time because they just passed it over to their spouses, right? So there's the layers of shame of we don't know this, we don't know ourselves in this way, and we just think we're bad and wrong, and we don't get that everyone that I know, again, no matter what economic background, folks from wealthy families, middle class, working class, and sometimes if you're working class, you'll say, no, I came from a poor family, but we all live different language, and we all have strengths and challenges and money issues and money stories, everyone. So that helps. There's the whole shame emotion. But then the third piece, which is something I research on the side because it's not the way I think, but it's the macro side of money. And it's what is going on in our economy and how our economy and money system is set up and how that needs to change. And is it just going to collapse, or are we going to slowly create a new system there? And that's a whole other area of this that does influence our relationship to money, but I tend to start with the micro and stay there for a long, long, long time. I go from the individual to the couple to the family to our work to our community, and then I go into our systems. But I have to be studying that. Mm-hmm. But it's not how I think, but there's a whole layer of how our system's been set up to.
Yeah, the bigger collective. Okay. Wow. Yeah, the shame piece, that really hit home. That's true for me and definitely people I've worked with over the years. It's a big one. And then we might turn away because we're ashamed. We might try to hide and keep postponing dealing with the bookkeeping or dealing with our finances together because I feel so bad, right? So
Because we
then
feel
I'm
so
creating
bad,
more
or we
problems
just,
potentially if I keep hiding out in my shame, right?
that's what happens, but we don't realize it. You know, we're just in the pain of it, we're in the feelings of it, we're in the embarrassment of it, we're in the I'm wrong and bad here, and I don't know how to do this. Again, I know so many people who are smart in so many ways and skilled, and even have in their working career have succeeded, and they feel I should know this. Like I shouldn't, and they don't even know that they can reach out to an accountant or a financial planner, or like your friend who sat you down for a year and handheld you into learning something that was a huge big deal for you know,
deal.
and filled with so much. So but yes, but I mean, I have people, I mean, I call it helping them across the bridge. Like I am there to get them to look at their numbers for the first time. A lot of them realize they're not hemorrhaging as bad as they are, or they are, and now they can finally see it and do something different. It's
Nice.
just cloak some layers.
Let's can we walk across that? Can we walk across that bridge like a little bit?
Yeah.
Hey guys, quick interruption. If you want to join this community of 3,000 or more people who are in this conversation about marriage, monogamy, long-term partnership, how to do this well, sex, finances, etc., join our Facebook group, jasongaddis.com/smartcouplegroup. We'll take you right there. Ask to join and come in and introduce yourself, and let's get to know each other. Okay, back to Bari Tessler. What do you so let's say we are challenged in our marriage around money, either both of us and we fight about it, or individually one of us is kind of jammed up about it. What are some of the tips that you recommend for people, a couple in particular, to start to deal with their money challenges?
So I feel like I have two different answers. I have the roadway that I take couples on, which I'd love to share, and then, but there's also just the individual path of starting to do your own money work, and whether that's picking up a book, The Art of Money, my book, or any other, picking up a book and just starting to read about the emotions around money and starting to understand your strengths and challenges, right?
Okay.
So there's that. There's the path of learning some of the practical things. And years ago, I for years, I've always started with the emotional psychological work first. Over the years, I thought, should we just get rid of this? Should we just jump to the practical? Have we done enough therapy? Have we should we just move to the practical? And over again, I find that while everyone takes different amounts of time, I teach it in a year-long program now. I used to teach it in a weekend workshop. I don't even know how, or an 8-week course, or right. I teach it in a year now because it's a lifelong journey. It's a lifelong practice, and giving people a framework that they can keep coming back to for years and years. Yeah. But so there's no, when I say like you need to do the money healing work, it's not like you do it for this period of time and then you're done and then you move on to the practical, right? It's just the time frame. I can't put a time frame out there, but I do know that when people do the emotional work first, they get to the practical and they're just ready for it in a different way. They're not glossing over. Their eyes don't glaze back, or they can stay in their body long enough and deal with more challenging feelings, or go, I'm starting to check out here. I need to go take a break and go, take a walk outside while you're learning QuickBooks. Or, I really need someone to hold my hand. I'm not someone like, Forrest, my husband, just one day got himself on Mint, got himself on iBank, and taught him the programs like in an evening and was done, and then I could never do that. And so we need to know our learning style, and we need to know we may need support. And that's okay to learn all the practical things and get a good teacher who can teach you and explain it in a way where it's not making you bad and wrong. where you don't feel, and so doing some of the emotional work before, and in the emotional work, I'm teaching people how to do body check-ins, which is just the very first tool I give people. And people say, out of all your work, Barry, that's the most life-changing practice. Huh. That right there.
The body check-in. I know.
The body check-in, I'm like, really? What about like looking at your numbers? All of that is amazing as well. But the body check-in is on a day, there's all these daily money interactions when we're going online to look at our numbers, when we're going to have a money conversation with our partner or spouse, when we're going to reach out to a new financial person on our team, like a bookkeeper, accountant, even just to interview them, right? And on and on. There's all these daily moments when we're going to the mailbox, if we still get our bills that way, and then sitting down to pay them. Daily, there's daily money interactions. Mm-hmm. What about, taking, the stop, center, do a little, what some people call meditation, or just stopping and checking in on a physical level, sensation level, emotional level, and with your breath, and just asking yourself what's going on and where you're at. And it could be 30 seconds, and it could be a few minutes. I have a whole thing, but it could be 30 seconds of just checking in. What's the emotion? Where am I at right now? And inviting yourself to do this before you're going to have the money conversation, even doing it. You might remember in the heat of the moment while you're freaking out or so pissed or wanting to blame, like catch yourself and do a body check-in right there. Or some of us remember the body check-in after is the debriefing. And there's no you have to do a body check-in before, during, and after. So it's just a tool that I give people, and I say practice this on a daily basis.
And do you recommend that just so we don't kind of let our emotions run us? Is that why, or our body kind of goes into fight or flight, or why the body check-in? Why does that matter?
Because I want you to learn about yourself, and I want to help you bring more awareness and understanding, which leads to change, to your money story.
Okay,
to
great.
Your strengths, your challenges, and your patterns, and your particular cocktail of emotions that comes up.
Yeah,
I want you to know yourself better. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of the listeners. Some listeners might be like, they don't even know they're dissociating, right? When they're going to pay their bills or looking online, they're like gone, and then they quickly go to Facebook because they don't want to deal. So I really like this because it's a centering practice or something to help me get present with, like, no, you can do this. Like, stay in your body, stay here. Let's just check in and see what's happening. Okay, great. So that helps me understand. Cool.
So, and everyone has a different routine, and it's fascinating. One woman told me that her routine was like, sit down, pay the bills as fast as she fucking can, and like just
get out of there.
Just do it, And then when she was so checked out the entire time. So we all have a different thing. Some of us are like, oh, Facebook, let me get on Facebook. And we may need to do money dates in 10-minute little increments at the beginning. And that's another somatic concept. Titration comes from Peter Levine's work. Yep. And it's you might need to do things in bite-sized chunks and increments, because we do check out on all different levels. So we're basically training ourselves to stay more present, to be able to tolerate feelings, or experiences or sensations.
Yeah.
So that's a huge tool in the money healing work. There's also, understanding money stories, all of that, but there's also a huge piece there around forgiveness work. And I'm just going to name this, and then I'll talk about a path for couples.
Okay.
But there's a whole piece around forgiveness for me, because I left this out the first year or two, and people were coming in with the shame, so much shame. And then we were starting to talk about it, and it was feeling like a safe place to talk about, this is what I do well about money, this is what I don't do well, this is what I learned from my family, this is what they never taught me, this is what I'm pissed about that my family never taught me. And then at some point we realized, oh, well, they didn't learn it either, or they escaped this country and they were doing the best they could, as they were raising you. And we all, come from a different lineage, and there's so much in that. But what was happening is I was sitting down with people, and people were saying, I haven't paid my taxes in years, or I signed a contract when I was getting married, like a prenuptial, and I never read it. And now we're divorcing, and it would have really been beneficial if I had read that and stood up for my value. And I wasn't able to do that. at that time. Now I would. So there's all these things. And while I don't like to dwell in the past, I think my Art of Money work is about being with the past, present, and future. And some of us have harder times in each of them. Like for a while, I've had a hard time thinking about the future, and I had to sit down and go, okay, I need to think about the future, and vision. And we started looking into life insurance years ago, or a few years ago, and I had to really train myself to think about the future. Other of us have a hard time going, with the past, or more being present around money. But so for me, this whole piece around there is something we didn't do well, or there was a mess we created, or something we didn't know how to do because of who we were at the time. And there's a whole piece here around forgiving ourselves, forgiving the other person, forgiving our God. And it could just be a simple thing. And forgiveness can happen in an instant, and it can happen in, over years. It's such an interesting thing for me. Forgiveness, what really is that, and how do we forgive, and what are the layers of that? But I would like to just bring that in as a concept, too, around the healing, that a lot of us just need to forgive ourselves for the mistake we made because we didn't know any better, or that's where we were. And now we're different, and we can change, and we can make changes. So that's a layer in the healing work as well.
Okay, great.
And that's more just individual work.
Yeah.
Right?
All the work that the listener can do on your own. Then there's the couple stuff.
Then in couples, we said so much around this. So I'll just name these 4 steps because, again, we come together. We start doing our money dance day one. We don't talk about it, or we talk about it a lot, or we're, one person, or we decide to have a family, and we never really clearly talk about if, again, I'm generalizing, if it could be 2 women, right? But who's staying home with the kids? Who wants to? Who doesn't want to? Who has to? There's so much during the child rearing years, especially the younger ones, of who's bringing home the money, and what does that mean? And do we get equal say if one person's making the money and one person's staying home with the kids? Do we each feel we have equal say about how the money is being spent?
Right.
And just on and on. And again, do you merge finances? Do you separate? There's all these things that happen. Are you on the same team around how you spend? Who's looking at the numbers? Who's doing them? So the little 4, it's a pathway of 4 phases, I call it, of how to help couples, like if they're 5 years in, 10 years in, 20 years in, learn how to have a loving, compassionate, healthy relationship with their partner or spouse, maybe for the first time around money. So I love that you, and Ellen, this is not a pain point. I'm just like, it's really unusual.
Yeah.
It's really unusual. Well, in my world, because that's why people are coming to me, right?
Sure.
And I know couples that have been together 16 years and are so loving, compassionate, have great communication skills, and a great sex life 16 years in with a teenager, and this was their main area. This was where they would fight.
Yeah.
Or they would get so mad and place attention. So I had them go back to the beginning and start to learn how to have money dates for the very, very first time, which is just coming together to talk about money. And I would say, don't talk about numbers at all. Your very first money dates, I want you to tell stories. So I call it story time. And just get together and use some tools from other areas of life, like meaning, do you need to light a candle? Do you need to set some rules to feel safe? Do you need to say, I'm going to talk for 15 minutes, and then you're going to talk for 15 minutes, and we're not going to jump in while the other person is talking, and we're going to watch our blame and shame, and we're going to, a lot of the rules that we use in healthy communication, bring them in. And I'm saying this, but this is not easy terrain, or it's not normal terrain. And so start to set up a money date, maybe even 30 minutes at the beginning, and just have it as a space where you can tell stories about family of origin. Some of the things I've already named. What did you learn from your family, from your parents, grandparents, whoever raised you? What was your role if you had siblings? My brother and sister went right to saving right away, and I was the designated spender. Like I had a lot of things I wanted, the the ring at the school fair for my mom, or candy, or like, so somehow I was the spender because I liked a lot of things or wanted things, had desires, and they were savers, like from the age of 8, you know.
Yeah.
There's so much to learn or remember, or our first money memories, or our first job. And I want couples to just start to tell stories.
Okay.
And they, at the beginning, they may not always go well. You may need to go off in your own corners after that 30 minutes and have, you know, go off into nature. They may get really heated at the beginning. They may not end well. I've heard all of this, right? Normal couple stuff. And you just practice. You keep practicing, and you keep coming back, and you set it up for 30 minutes. And you do story time for a while. And then after that, you move into phase 2, which is talking about your values. And I love this piece because on the surface, as couples, we fall in love for many reasons, right? And
yeah.
But on the surface, it seems that we have the same values.
Yeah, and early on. Yeah.
Early on. And though with earning and spending and saving and giving and investing, we usually do things differently. And so we need to start talking about that, right? But at first, I want you just to talk about your values, like make lists of your values, share them, and then start talking about how do you represent those values in the way that you spend or save or give or want to invest or any of it. And I'll give one example of this from my own marriage. So Forrest comes to me so many years ago and says he wants to buy an expensive road bike, right?
Yep.
Jayson, I'm horrified.
Yeah.
Horrified.
You're like $5,000 on what?
Totally. What?
Yeah.
You know, I'm not into gear at all. I dance and hike. There's no gear needed. I don't get it. I don't spend money in big chunks like that.
Yeah.
You know, I just was horrified. And, you know, so he made his case, and we were, you know, it felt intense, but he sat me down and he said, let me tell you how important a road bike is, what I think it's going to do for me, what it represents, how I'm going to pay for it. You know, everything from he's going to earn sexy points because he's going to get in better shape, and feel better in his body. You
Smart
know,
guy here. He's selling you well.
Oh, he sold me. He set up the whole thing, you know, to I have Lyme disease and I think this is going to help, which it does for him.
Totally.
And just on and on. He's going to put this much down, and then I'll take on 2 more freelancing clients to pay for it. He set up the whole thing, right? Yeah. And in that, I got to really hear the value of this for him. You know, now it's still a risk, and it's still, we don't know how it's all going to play out, but you know, I had to really listen to that. In that same conversation, though, he brought up my love and spending of self-care, the acupuncture I go to, and the chiropractic work, and the massage, and all the lotions that I get. And he's horrified by that. I mean, I'm teasing, but we were. Yeah. Originally, we were horrified. Because he's like, you spend so much money on self-care. And he, as a man, as who my husband is, he's a Enneagram 5, would never do that. You know, he's going to get a bike.
Yeah. Get a bike, dude. Stop. No, you don't need acupuncture. Yeah.
Totally. So what we wound up doing is we went ahead with the bike. He wound up, you know, honoring and staying true to the money agreement. And I got to watch over that next year what it actually gave for him, what it did for him on every single level. And it did. It represented all those values that he presented to me. And then at the end of that next year, we sat down and I added up all of my acupuncture and all of that. I think it was 2 years worth. I don't remember exactly of my version of self-care versus his. And it was pretty equal. Uh-huh. It was really, really equal. So that's just an example of, like, on the surface, we're pretty horrified. We spend differently. We earn differently. We just do all of that differently. And I want couples to just begin to have a much deeper conversation around values, what it means to them. Now, if you don't have the money, you don't have the money, but you need to be talking about, you know, what are your values and how do you want to represent them and at what time. We can't get everything we want at the same time. We have to plan it out, do it in phases, all of that. Yep. So that's phase 2 is about talking about values. Phase 3 is who's on what, like who's on all the practical parts, right? And the money dates and what I call quickies in the kitchen. Okay, so Quickies in the kitchen. Okay, so
Nice. Explain
that.
that.
Yeah, thank you. So who's on what is who's literally doing the bookkeeping and who's paying the bills and who's tracking the numbers. Every once in a while I get a couple who's basically like polarized. They haven't polarized. They're on the same team and they're both going, we're not growing up. We don't want to deal with this. Can someone else be the adult or someone else take care of this for us? And no one's doing it,
Yeah.
So but that's a rare scenario usually. But you got to talk about that, because again, at the beginning when I talked about polarizing, usually one person takes it on because they feel they know how to do that better, or they're better at numbers, or they like to be more in control,
Yeah.
And eventually you're going to have to switch in a long marriage. I would hope you would switch at some point. Or at least one of you sitting down and tracking all the numbers, and then both of you come in at the end of the month to review them. If one person is totally sitting out on the sidelines, that's not going to work. But you have to find, how the heck do you bring that person in when they're having such strong emotions and they feel so much shame? They don't even want to sit down on a money date to look at the numbers,
Yeah.
So, but if you do some of these phases before, by the time you get to who's on what and who's looking at the numbers, hopefully there's more love and compassion around this area, and you can just understand each other better, or maybe realize you need to bring in a third person, to help
bookkeeper or
teach
whoever.
you how to do the books for you, exactly, and then show you how to read the numbers and on and on. So who's on what?
Let me ask you a question about this.
Yeah.
Do you ever see it work where one person just takes it on and the other person kind of checks out, but is totally cool with the other person doing it and trusts them completely? And does that work for some couples?
Sure. I mean, yeah, it can work. Until it doesn't work any longer, so none of this is static, unfortunately, but that's in any area of life. I'd love to be able to get to the same weight and stay there forever and just dial that in. That's not my body. And it's the same thing with our money practices, and they need to change, and they do change. And there's also life transitions that happen and knock us off where we're at and throw everything back up at the air, and then we need to recreate it.
We need to evolve, basically, is what I hear you saying is we've got to evolve along with the relationship and life and transitions and things change. And so let's be adaptable like that and agile.
We do. And the thing is, though, the one person who's not looking at all, that can work for some time because, in couples, I have my terrain, my husband is his terrain, and sometimes they don't cross over. But when it comes to this area of life that could bite you in the butt at some point, if you don't even know where the passwords are, if you don't even know how to read a report, if you really don't know how much is being spent and where, you don't need to, take this on as your work or become a bookkeeper or any of that. But at some point, a lot of my folks realize that the just passing it over to their partner completely and trusting them isn't working for them.
Yeah,
anymore.
Yeah, let me use an analogy here. In my world, with the people I work with, it'd be like saying, honey, I'm going to go to therapy and work on our relationship, and you don't have to come. And you can just sit there and keep being yourself, and I'm going to go do all this work on our relationship. It doesn't really work, So I think you're saying the same thing, that like we both have to be engaged here, and one we can trade off. Like you can do it for maybe a little while, a couple of years, and then we need to be, if we want to evolve financially together, we both need to be in this conversation, is what I hear you saying. Is that right?
It's true. And the thing is though, this is so charged for so many people that they're each going to come in at different points, and their timing's going to be different, and their styles may be really different. But that's part of this 4-phase thing that I take people through, is that everyone has different styles, and we have to, and different timing around, like one person may be so scared to come in, and so one person does go first. They go into therapy first to do their own work, and then the other person has to follow at some point so that you are on the same team. Or otherwise you're not. You're really not.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay, so great. So we got the 3. Was there any more points you wanted to add to the practical who's on what section?
Yeah, I mean, the who's on what is also just money dates, to talk about the numbers.
I love that.
Yeah, monthly dates, quarterly. If you have kids, quarterly is pretty amazing. If you can get in quarterly money dates, And this is where, Forrest thinks it's hysterical. We sit down, I light my candles, I start spritzing essential oils over our heads. He's like, okay, whatever you need, honey, that's what I need, I need to create some sacred space to light my candles. Otherwise, that's how I center. He doesn't need any of that. But,
Yep.
Money dates is just on a monthly basis, quarterly basis, sitting down, reviewing all your numbers, understanding your patterns, what's your monthly amounts that you need, where are you going, all of that. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
there's the money dates, the longer ones, and then there's the quickies in the kitchen, which is there's quickies in the kitchen, in our sex lives, hopefully, there is, and in money too. It's like there's going to be these quick conversations that need to happen. They're not the longer, more luxurious, deeper connecting moments. They're, okay, honey, we need to move money over, or when are you getting paid? When is that transaction coming through? All of that stuff, and have that not be heated or charged. Have that just be more neutral at some point, or more loving.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Love it.
Yeah. So that's the third. And then the fourth phase is just really getting on the same team on a larger level. So again, in a long marriage, we're going to go through different phases. One person's going to be making more money. I see in a long marriage where some couples are switching. It's all different, right? Sometimes the woman's making more for years, and that brings up all sorts of things that you got to talk about.
Yep. Sometimes
one person is making more, and then they switch. And my husband and I used to have a healthy competition. Who's making more? Each year. It was really healthy. We don't do that anymore. But so who's making more? And then also, where are you at with your dreams and your work? And how is that connected? So some of us are still figuring that out. Some of us take a steady job to make that work for the family when we have little kids for a period of time. At some point that may not work anymore, and they may need to leave that. And that's scary. Mm-hmm. It's also, we ultimately have to support the other person to be living their dreams. So that's a little bit of that larger terrain, what people call the visioning, the dreaming, but I really bring in the numbers there, and that's where what people call budgets, or I call a money map or a map of intention, where I'm really wanting you to look at the numbers and say, what phase of life are you in? Are you in basic needs lifestyle? Are you in comfortable lifestyle? Are you in ultimate? What does that even mean to you as a concept in numbers? And I'll tell you, in my community, when people talk about those three different tiers, the numbers are so vastly different. So my comfortable lifestyle could be someone else's basic needs.
Yeah, totally.
Or someone else's ultimate could be someone's comfortable, or vice versa,
Mm-hmm.
So it's so relative, but getting a couple together to, I guess this is more of the, are you really, really, truly on the same team around supporting each of you at different phases? Who's bringing in the money? How much? How do you all feel about that? What's your relationship to work, career, being a parent, and how are you navigating all of that together?
Yeah, great. Okay, so let me review. It sounds like these, you call them four what? What's the title there?
4 phases of money with your honey. I think that's the name of the article or the piece. Yeah.
4 phases of money with your honey. And okay, great. So we got story time, just getting to know each other. Who's the roles? Like, what's our family story? What's the history here? And number 2, what are our values and how they're connected to money? 3, who's doing what in terms of who's on what, the practical part of bookkeeping, making money dates, the quickies. And then the 4th one is getting on the same page in our vision, like our life vision. What phase are we in, and are we on the same team here? Do we have a shared reality about what we're doing with our money life and where our finances go? Is that a good summary?
Yeah, it is. I mean, and then that whole thing just needs to be practiced, over and over and over. And a lot of hard stuff is going to come up,
Yeah.
And so you need to go to therapy while you're doing this.
Right. You got to face yourself. I love that part too, the focus that you have on the inner work, because I'm guessing there's a lot of, financial experts that don't even touch the money psychology stuff. They're just like, yeah, well, you need to have a conversation with your wife or your husband and just talk about it. And it's so loaded. It's like, for someone like me, I've had therapy, I've had coaching, I've had hired mentors, I've done all kinds of stuff to face taking classes, to face my money stuff, right? And it's been extremely empowering. And I love these steps. They resonate for me. Ellen and I certainly have gone through all of this in our own way. And one of the things we love that I want to highlight that you're saying here is the money dates thing. Like you'd be proud of me, Bari. Like years after taking your course, we finally did like a really consistent money date, did a budget for the whole year. And this is the first year we did a formal budget and stuck to it. And we just finished the year and we're under budget.
Wow.
And we kicked ass. We were high-fiving, like hug, like, yes, we did this.
Wonderful. That's huge. And this stuff takes years. That's the thing, right?
Yeah.
And every year we're evolving and updating and fine-tuning it. And you two have come to this. So when you say years after your class, it's not like, oh, you take the class and everything's in place now, you know?
Right. Yeah, I mean, maybe for some people, it wasn't for me, but maybe some people do that.
Mm-hmm. Amazing that you guys were able to do this together. Yeah.
Thank you for being such a huge part of the inaugural moments of my own money journey. You really helped set it off.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah.
So
I feel like we got into a lot of the practical stuff. You know, there's such deep stuff around emotions and all of that, but I feel like we shared some good practical pieces of just how couples could begin, or a few tools to begin to do their own money work, and then even to just realize how this is such a charged and loaded and emotional area when you come together with another person, and to be gentle and loving with yourself, knowing that there's usually can be some layers of shame as you're beginning all of this work. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, we covered an awesome train. So I think it's really useful. And if people want to dive deeper, they can certainly buy your book, The Art of Money. Where do people find that?
Everywhere. It's Amazon. It's in all the local independent bookstores, and it's in the Barnes & Noble. So it's everywhere.
Wow. Awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And where can people find you, Bari?
Come to my website, which is my name, Bari Tessler, BariTessler, and I love free content. I love all the articles that we put out. We put out a new piece every 2 weeks, and there's also a little free mini Art of Money course, a 7-day Art of Money mini course. So my website's filled with stuff, and then you can also see that I'm about to open my year-long program with the same name, The Art of Money, and it's a international program. Last year we had 400 students. Every year we grow a bit, and it's from folks from all across the world.
Wow, very cool. And when does that start? So in case I want to make sure we put this out before that if we can.
So we open up January 17th, and then the whole community begins together on February 1st. So anywhere from January 17th through the beginning of February will still be open, and the whole community starts their journey together on February 1st. And so anywhere in January and beginning February is great.
Okay, sweet. Well, thanks, Bari, so much for your help, helping the people here, helping me around our money issues and people in relationship and marriages. It's very, very helpful, so thanks.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yep. All right, take care. All right, guys. Good stuff, right? Go to baritessler.com to find out more about The Art of Money and her year-long course that starts soon. baritessler.com, B-A-R-I, Tessler with 2 S's.com. That'll be in the show notes too, okay? And she has a beautiful website designed by her husband, who is a badass biker. I've beat him like once, and the dude just dominates me on the mountains here in Boulder. But my excuse is he trains harder than I do. That one was for you, Forrest. All right. Here's your action step, guys. It's pretty straightforward. After listening to this, it's kind of obvious for some of you that you need to have the conversation, right? So approach your partner and say, hey, I'd like to talk about money, our money stuff. Are you open to that? Get their consent, get their buy-in, tell them why it matters to you. This is important to me because, I feel scared. I want us to be on the same page. I'm worried about our differences. You make more than I do. I make more than you do. Whatever. I'm scared about this being a problem for us. And are you willing to talk about it? Now that's for if you feel fearful and charged up about it. If you feel fairly empowered around money and maybe you're not on the same team, then that would be the direction to go to is, hey, honey, I know we never talk about money because we're well off and we're doing just fine, but how about we talk about money and have a more, collaborative conversation around it? Are you open to that? So that's another possibility for someone in that situation. For someone else, see if you can, let's say you're really empowered around money, then your action step is to go reach out to another couple that you feel is a little disempowered or struggling and just offer to help them with their books or give them feedback or listen while they vent to you. There's a number of different ways here, no matter where you are on the money scale in terms of your own empowerment around this conversation, to show up. So show up with your vulnerability, your truth, and do your best to be a bridge to have this conversation, not a cannon or bazooka. All right. See if you can just bridge the conversation into a more collaborative place for the two of you. And find out how different you are, find out how similar you are, find out where your values are. Oh, that makes sense. I loved Barry's example of her and her husband with the bike and with her with self-care. And it's that kind of stuff that it starts out as tension and it can turn into a win-win like it is for them. So yeah, please investigate here, right? Just be one of those couples that's like got it together around money so that you can help the rest of us that are jammed up, right? It's inspiring when couples are, that's not an issue. That's not what they fight about anymore. Maybe they're fighting about sex or the kids or something else. But if you're fighting about money, deal with it. Go deal with it. Okay. And then finally, if this was helpful and you want to hear more about money, I need to hear from you. Otherwise, this may not happen again for another year. So if this was useful information and you'd like to have Barry back or other guests around money, please let us know. And I've got a couple people potentially lined up, but I don't really want to do it if you guys aren't interested in it. So give me some feedback. Ideally, this is where your feedback is most helpful in the Smart Couple Facebook group, okay? It's an easy place for us to track your feedback. Just go in there and say, I loved episode 90, and who agrees with me? And then a bunch of people can like it, and that gives us feedback. Okay, wow, only 10 people liked that and made comments. That out of 3,000 people, that means it's probably not coming back. But if we get a bunch of those comments in the Smart Couple group, then we'll consider more money episodes. Okay, guys, thank you. And by the way, here's your last action step is just to join that group, the Smart Couple Facebook group. Go to jasongaddis.com/Smart Couple group, or you can just go, you're on Facebook all the time, just type in the search bar, Smart Couple Facebook group or Smart Couple and Monogamy, and it'll show up. And then you can ask to join, okay? It's a private group. Okay, beautiful people. Risk being you a step further today.